Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, it's Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube, and my, oh my, has it been a busy couple of days in the entertainment industry, to say the very least. To unpack it all in just about an hour, or maybe slightly more, is the gruesome twosome once again. We're without Joe Viso, still recovering a little bit. He had to take tonight off. I don't actually quite remember the reason why. I don't want to spill his private business on the air, but I don't remember why he needed tonight off, but we gave it to him anyway because that's just how we roll over here on Sleepless with Steve. And Dominic is smarter than me, so he's capable of hosting the show. Come to you live in living color every Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock Central, or at 6:30 Central Time. Jumping way ahead over here. Looking forward to the show today, though, because we've got a lot to chew on today. We have got Death of a Unicorn is our movie today. Going to try to make heads or tails of this one. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about this one, Dom,
I think it's actually going to be pretty straightforward. I think so.
This one is very divisive. It's a very divisive movie. Decent showing at our theater too. Had about 10 people in there on a Sunday afternoon. So I had a decent, showing for a movie that didn't have a ton of press, I don't think. And then we also have an amendment to Coyote versus Acme. Some very good news that dropped yesterday too that we will share. We're kind of just not putting a bow on it, because we will, I presume, review it when it does come out in 2026. But some very good news on that front, that film will indeed see the light of day thanks to Catch Up Entertainment. So we'll bookend that with a little brief statement, just kind of piggybacking off of what we were talking about last week on the show. And then we had a big loss today in the entertainment industry, unfortunately. Val Kilmer passed away at the age of 65 years old. That was really sad news to wake up to today. But it's been made a little bit more palatable, just because on social media there's been so many great tributes to him and the wealth of works that he has done. So we will touch on that. We'll begin with that in just a few minutes. First things first, how are you today, D?
I'm doing all right. A little gloomy here in Chicagoland today, but for the most part, we're doing A-okay. And yeah, just getting back into the swing of things. I used up all my PTO in time, and I'm very thankful for it, because...
Proud of you.
I know everyone's situation is different, but if you can, please use your PTO.
Drain the bitch.
Yeah, man. And try and give yourself a day. It can be very, very nice. Although I understand some people get pittance for PTO. Maybe you can factor that into your job prospects, but use it when you can.
Absolutely. I think I told you a couple weeks ago when you said you had a surplus of PTO, it was use it or lose it. I think I said if you really just don't have any vacations or anything, I just recommend Fridays and Mondays.
Yes. That's what another coworker of mine did. Yeah.
Highly recommend Fridays and Mondays. You don't realize it. Thankfully, my job affords me quite a bit of PTO. And what's nice is what I've started doing too is when Catherine and I travel, let's say we get back on Monday, I take Tuesday off. And I'll tell you, it makes the week that much better. If you can come home from a vacation knowing you don't have to go to work the next day, it's very nice. When we had our week-long trip in Oklahoma, I took like 8 days off. And the one day we were both just home and didn't do anything. But that recovery day is nice. It's like Sinatra used to say, nice work if you can get it, or lack thereof. But we will jump in. We'll jump right into this. I want to just say a few brief things about this. Val Kilmer passing away. I mentioned it a few minutes ago, age of 65. Val Kilmer was diagnosed with throat cancer about 10 years ago. And basically, he underwent a tracheal procedure that damaged his vocal cords. And I was kind of surprised. I feel like it wasn't like Val Kilmer was a pretty private individual. So he wasn't the type of person that really sought out the limelight, especially in the end. He was always one of those guys that like really just seemed like workman in the regard that, he had his career. He did very well at it, but he didn't seek the limelight. Roger Ebert had a really good quote back in 92. He said, if there is an award for the most unsung leading man of his generation, Kilmer should get it. And I could agree with that, especially in the 90s, too, when he did some of his best works, everything from The Doors to Tombstone to Batman Forever and things like that. But basically his last role, the last time we really saw Val Kilmer, if it wasn't the documentary in 2021, it was the Top Gun Maverick. And I think a lot of people didn't realize at the time, if you didn't know he was ill, like the work they had to go through to make that scene possible. A
Hmm.
lot of his speech in that scene is digitally rendered
Wow.
because he pretty much lost the ability to talk at the very end because of his tracheal procedures. Throat cancer all but took his voice. And I remember there was like not a controversy, but it was like because it was right about it was kind of pre AI, but there were some suggestions that's how that was used. I remember this. I remember Deadline did an article on it, and Kaczynski, the director of that, Joseph Kaczynski, came out and said that that scene was done via digital altering because it was right at the time too. The Irishman came out a couple of years ago, so there was the de-aging process.
Hmm.
There was a lot of new technology at the time, but like Top Gun Maverick, they used digital software to kind of recreate his voice. I think I remember reading too that in that scene he actually they did a couple of takes of it, and by the last few takes he had to lip sync the lines
Wow.
because he could not talk. So it was a true struggle to get him to in that movie in some capacity. That's why that scene is of all of in Maverick. That whole scene that he's in is pretty static, like it's just him in a room because he really just didn't do much. He really was just that was sort of the end of his career, and it was kind of a fitting bookend, no less. But he leaves behind a treasure trove of roles. I always remember him in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang alongside Robert Downey Jr. That was Shane Black's directorial debut back in '05. Wonderful performance, funny performance in that movie too. He also played an abusive father in the movie Joe the King, directed by Frank Whaley, who you might remember from Career Opportunities. Always liked him in that role as well. Those are like the first two movies that came to mind, among others. There's a handful I haven't seen, like Top Secret and Real Genius. There's a few of his movies I have not watched. You're smiling. Have you seen either?
I've seen Top Secret, which was his first. This is his film debut.
That was his
He
debut.
started his career with Top Secret and ended it with Top Gun. So hell of a career right there. Yeah, man. Top Secret. Honestly, I saw it when I was young. Frankly, too young because a lot of the jokes were going over my head. This is
One of
the
the few ZAZ movies I never saw.
yeah, exactly. And man, you're missing out. It's one of their best, in my opinion. It is a true spiritual, I guess, prequel. Not a prequel because that would mean it came after, but it is the proto airplane. And in my opinion, it does very, very, very well for itself because Val Kilmer is basically a rock star who has to go to East Germany to play a concert, but then all these shenanigans happen, and it's all absolutely ridiculous. The spoofs are so funny. Like for instance, this takes place in the 80s, so it's East Germany, but it's an implicit joke that all the Germans are like Nazis. Well, it's like, wait a minute, this is East Germany. I thought, but it's because it's a spoof of like spy movies of the time or like geopolitical movies. He's also like a rock star and who does like rockabilly, even though it's the 80s. And it again, just a lot of implicit jokes that are really, really funny. And I would strongly suggest you watch it because I think it's pretty damn good.
I would like to watch it. I'd like to double back and see that one again. I think it is the only. I was just looking. I think it's the only ZAZ movie I never watched. So that is a little bit of a blind spot right there too. He's done so much though.
Mm-hmm.
There's Alexander. There's a few movies you have to kind of remember that he did too. True Romance he was in as well. Deja Vu, which was with Denzel Washington back in '06. Yeah, so just a treasure trove of roles. And again, unflashy but memorable and impactful in all of his performances too. I didn't even mention too another one that I really like too. Actually, Catherine's watching it rewatching it right now. It's Wonderland. So if you hear that in the background, that's what that is. That's a great movie. That's a violent fucking movie too. If you've ever seen it, that is a nasty movie, but it's very good, and he's very good in it. So it was sad to see that he did pass away, and also too very young. If I would have had to guess, I would have thought he was like 70. I didn't realize he was still 60 or he was only 65 either. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm glad he got to do Maverick though. I'm really glad that he got to end with that. Cause that was that's one of the rare, we talked about it on the show a couple of years ago. That's the rare Legacy sequel that I think fires on all cylinders. And a movie I just remember not being very excited to see just because of how I view Lego sequels. And then like 45 minutes in, I'm like, this might be the best blockbuster since Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah,
And I
man.
still hold that opinion. I still hold that opinion. Rest in peace to Val Kilmer, though.
Absolutely.
Would be remiss if we didn't say anything to start the show on that. We'll move forward, though. Talk about Death of a Unicorn. Where to begin with this weird thing? This is a new A24 movie. Alex Sharfman is the writer and director of Death of a Unicorn. This is truly a bizarre movie. One I was hoping would prompt a
Is it
interesting
bizarre?
conversation.
Is it really that bizarre?
I think it's a little absurd. I definitely
Absurd.
would.
I can see with that. Yeah, I would put it more
I
in the
got
science fiction category. I don't know how
yeah.
Wikipedia judges it. It says comedy horror according to Wikipedia.
I'm gonna start with this though, with this movie, because this was like something I whispered to Catherine like about like an hour into it or 45 minutes into it, whatever it was. I said it's almost like the script for this movie, when it was done and dusted, got run through a processor or maybe AI, because that's where creativity I feel like is stifled these days. It was run through some kind of processor that removed all of the comedy. It's very bizarre. I never could quite put my finger on it, but like this is one of those satires that comes very close to being funny so often, but it misses the opportunity at a joke, it tiptoes around a punchline, or it just moves on unceremoniously to the next scene.
Yeah.
And that I feel like that was one of the chief components of this movie that was missing. And it's not my only complaint. This movie basically though is about Paul Rudd and his daughter played by Jenna Ortega, excuse me. His daughter is like completely moody and disinterested. So of course she's played by the chief purveyor of moody and disinterested these days in Jenna Ortega. And essentially, what it is Paul Rudd is like this corporate bootlicker, works for a pharmacy corporation, and they go out to like the wilderness where this pharmaceutical executive's family's mansion resides. And on the way to this mansion, they hit a unicorn. They hit and they think they killed a unicorn. And basically, Paul Rudd bashes its brains in with a tire iron and stuffs it in the back of the car. They go to this pharmaceutical rep's house because Paul Rudd believes he can broker a deal with them that would set him and his daughter up financially for the rest of their life. Well, the unicorn winds up coming back to life. They shoot and kill it after it destroys the vehicle. And the remainder of the movie is the family and the head of this, or the pharmaceutical tycoon, rather, is played by Richard E. Grant. His wife's played by Tia Leone, and then his son is played by Will Poulter. I will never get over how different that guy looks after We're the Millers either.
Yeah.
Like, there's that old meme where it's like you could put like a picture of Will Poulter from We're the Millers and a picture of him in like Death of a Unicorn. It's like it's that age old meme. It's like he went from I'll have her back by 9 p.m. to she calls me daddy now. Like that dude, I don't know what he's on, the Carrot Top like workout regime or something. I have no idea. But anyway, so essentially then the remainder of the movie is like, of course, this pharmaceutical mogul is trying to figure out how they can harvest the unicorn's magical powers, including everything from its horn to its like sparkly purple blood, as sort of like an elixir, a magical healing elixir. And it's basically, if you boil it down, this movie is kind of like, it takes the Jurassic Park template a little bit. The Lost World, in particular, is the sequel it reminded me the most of. And it takes sort of this template and makes it like an eat the rich satire of like, if unicorns did in fact exist, they would probably wind up, and they did have magic capabilities. Let's just adhere to this movie's logic. They would probably be harvested by corporate greed and milked for all they're worth, which is not a far-fetched assumption. But this thing is just, it's like ever so close to being funny, but it's so tonally inconsistent and strange and very, for lack of a better term, off-putting in some ways. What do you make of Death of a Unicorn?
I'm very glad that we share similar views here, because I didn't have any hopes for this thing whatsoever, just because I didn't know what the hell this movie really was going in. So truly blind going into this. And I saw a really, really, really good recipe for clever commentary amidst this sci-fi kind of horror-esque monster flick, you know. And I unfortunately felt the same way you did in that it's very straightforward, too straightforward for its own good, which is why I understand what you mean by like absurd and weird movie, because the setup for the beast, for the creatures here is fantastical in the most you know in the every sense of the word, because they're literal unicorns and they have to deal with that in the movie, which I think is funny. But
and it's accepted from the get-go. It's not
yeah,
like, holy shit, there's a unicorn. Like, no, it's like, no, these are just a part of this world.
yeah, I can get over that. I can get over that because the characters do react appropriately. Where it's like, no, it's a freaking unicorn. But
Feral horse.
yeah, but for me, the opportunity that it provides, this is the class consciousness on this effing movie is turned up to the 11. Which, hey, I'm all for. I don't mind that at all, because a lot of people need that beat over their head. But at the same time, I don't think this, for me, it was a lot because I'm aware of these things. But for some people, it might just be enough to get into their heads. So that's all well and good. What was missing from this is, if this movie is characterizing, I don't know what this movie is characterizing it, but when you said like, yeah, it feels like there are jokes that just weren't there. And I think the reason why we felt that way, have you seen HBO's Barry starring Bill Hader?
A little bit of it
Yeah.
back during its initial run.
I know
First season, rather.
Dumping shows and movies on people is a curse, because I never have time to watch them either. But if I had to suggest just one TV show, it would be HBO's Barry. It's great, fantastic from start to finish, and it is done. So, you know, it's not like a million seasons. But that TV series is extremely well written. It is dark, and the humor is slapstick. It is slapstick screwball comedy amidst drug dealers, psychological, you know, fuckery, and hitmen and all this stuff. But there's so much slapstick dark humor that it just balances perfectly. And honestly, Bill Hader's a genius for making it. Anthony Carrigan plays a character in Barry. He was supposed to die in the first season. He was so good that Bill Hader just kept him through pretty much the whole run of the show. And his physical comedy and his sassiness comes a little bit through in this movie, in Death of a Unicorn, but it is underutilized to a decent degree. I understand his character wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but it is underutilized, and it contrasts, in my mind, my informed mind as someone who watched Barry, it contrasts so much, or it emphasizes the lack of, like, you're missing something here. It's like you're a black comedy without the comedy. So now you're just this straightforward thing that just turns into like a fairly predictable, monster movie, you know?
Definitely, well said. I liked Anthony Carrigan in this. I
Yes.
think he is underutilized. I like the way he can act with his eyes.
Oh yeah.
I appreciate that about
Watch
him.
Barry.
I enjoyed him in this. The only two that really, I think, effectively communicate some comedy is Carrigan and Will Poulter.
Yes. Oh,
I,
yeah.
I think Will Poulter's the funniest character in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And often it's at the expense of Griff, who Carrigan plays. Like two of the biggest laughs I had was when I won't ruin the line, but when Will Poulter's in the hot tub. Two of the biggest laughs I had were that, and then the other line, Will Poulter's delivery of like, "What's going on? I'm trying to grieve in there." Will Poulter's naturally funny, which excites. I mean, we remember him. We talked about it on Sleepless. I mean, he's naturally funny, but he also can be sinister. If you remember him in Detroit,
One of the most evil movie characters I've seen committed to film, just ever. Period.
That movie still sticks in my mind,
Uh-huh.
Detroit. And I'm really curious because next week Warfare comes out and he's in that. And that's another what looks to be another dark movie. Alex Garland. Um,
Mhm.
I guess the B side to Civil War, if you will. But
Honestly, the
Polter,
funny thing with Warfare is this is a total tangent, but it's like uh, uh, Garland was really trying to say something with Civil War, and then everyone looked at the gun scenes and was like, "Shit, he can do action." And then Garland was like, "Yeah, I can do action. Fuck, let's just do a whole movie on that." So now it's like up to the max. So that is actually my concern for Warfare. But anyway, that aside, yes, all
I
Will
agree.
Poulter just incredibly fine actor.
I think the highlight of this movie on an
He
acting
steals
level.
the show. Frankly, he steals the show by being just a complete. No one can play a prick better than him. Frankly,
No, it's true.
he has a
It's true.
he has a he's incredibly handsome. He also has a very punchable face. He just really does. When he
He
puts effort into it, he can be very punchable.
he's got a persnickety quality to
Yeah.
him that's kind of natural. That I think really shines here too. And Jenna Ortega's fine. Like Jenna Ortega is at the point now where it's like I don't think it's really her fault, but she's kind of typecast now.
Yeah.
Like her character here is really not a whole lot different from her character in Beetlejuice.
Hmm.
She's gonna play the angsty teen until she hits 30. She is, and then after that maybe we'll get like we'll get some darker stuff from her, like a little bit of change
Yeah.
in sort of her roles she takes, but she's fine here. She's okay as the emotional center of the movie. And again, now I have not seen, he's done 70 plus movies. I can't say this for grave certainty, but I say this with a decent amount of confidence. Is this not the most unlikable bastard Paul Rudd's ever played?
Yeah. I kind of like that about this character.
I do too. No, I'm not gonna lie. Like it's almost reminded me of like Keanu Reeves and Knock Knock in a way, where it's like you're just
Hmm.
not used to seeing an actor like this in this sort of role. And Paul Rudd in this role is so different than how you're used to seeing him. And I think he does well with it.
Yeah.
They try to shoehorn a bit of a redemption arc at the end that I didn't fully buy, but I do like that he tried to play unlikable. It's almost like, initially like the last couple of years, Hugh Grant's been playing more villain roles.
Hmm.
And I don't think he's as good as Hugh Grant in something like Heretic, or even Paddington 2. But I do like Rudd. I'm like I do kind of look at Rudd like, man, you're not the unlikable type, and you really nailed it, especially early in the movie.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that caught me off guard.
I agree. I think this. The funny thing is, this cast is great. No, there's really no weak link here, in my opinion. Everyone is doing okay. I get you could argue Ortega, but that's not really at her. She's doing just fine. Hardly a weak link. But everyone here is doing fantastic. I want to give a shout out to Sunita Mani. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She plays the uh, scientist, the younger scientist, and I appreciate her character because I think her character in the moral framework of all of these characters, she plays a very critical role in that. So like, again, as I said, class conscious. This movie is all about class consciousness. You got the really really effing rich people, you've got the people in the middle, and then you've got the poor working class fucks like Anthony Kerrigan, right? Who was just consistently bullied throughout the whole movie.
And Jessica Hines is the other one.
Yes, thank you. And Sunita Mani, she plays kind of the person in the middle, where it's like, well, we need to do what we need to do. Yeah, I don't like those rich bastards, but we got to play along. We got to play the game, whatever it takes to survive, and then consequences from there. And I thought that character at least was actually really important as like the exposing that little ground there in the middle, gives it a little more weight than I did before, because I actually did feel bad when things happened.
I said that earlier. This movie kind of reminded me structurally of the Lost World Jurassic Park movie. It also kind of has a little bit of like, especially when it comes to like the scenes inside the Leopold estate. Again, Odell Leopold, played by Richard E. Grant.
Yeah.
It kind of has a little bit of it's not shot as well, but it has a little bit of Yorgos Lanthimos in there, a little bit, like in terms of I think the manicured interiors and the contrasts of lifestyles.
Mhm.
And then this is recency bias, I already know, but I do think that like the Scharfman kind of evokes the themes of like environmental consciousness by way of kindness to animals in a way that's very similar to like Mickey 17 and
Yeah.
Okja and Bong Joon-ho in a way. He's definitely unsubtle like Bong Joon-ho too.
Hmm.
Um in ways. I think that really, and this is gonna sound really bad, but I say it anyway. I think the one thing this movie really lacks is like grace. I think that this
Hmm.
movie lacks a lot of like so like essentially it devolves into sort of a monster movie, as you
Yeah,
said.
correct.
It goes into like a horror style movie where the unicorns retaliate. So basically where I kind of left off on the plot is just when they're trying to figure out how they can harvest the corpse of the unicorn and its magical powers, the other unicorns in the tribe start retaliating against those that killed and maimed one of their own.
Mhm.
It's all abiding by the unicorn tapestries, which at one point Tia Leone refers to as the unicorn draperies, which I thought was funny. Reminded me again. It reminded me of Mickey 17 when Tony Collette calls those creeper things. She says they look like a croissant dipped in shit. Reminded me of that. But when I say this movie lacks grace, it's like okay, I don't mind the monster movie angle. But one of the issues I had with this thing, and I hate to harp because I think it's a lack of budget. People bitching about the visual effects. A lot of critics were taking aim at the visual effects. The visual effects didn't bother me.
They
I
were
didn't think
serviceable.
the
They
uni-
weren't the best in the world, but
I agree. They didn't. They that is very low on my list of complaints. If it really is a complaint at all, I thought the unicorns looked fine,
they were fine.
but I think forget the effects. The one thing I really hate is that like okay, so this movie takes about like an hour
Mm.
before the unicorns start to retaliate and everything. Well, by this point it's nighttime. And by this point it's nighttime when the unicorns start to attack. Now, I don't know if they had to do this because of budgetary restrictions
Mm.
or whatever, but like when the unicorns attack, it gets to be so damn dark that like one of the joys of movies like this is seeing the rich people die,
Hmm.
is seeing the manipulative, greedy bastards die. And being that this is set in at not only at night but poorly lit, you don't get to appreciate the deaths and the maimings of these characters like you should. And it's also, I think, when it turns night, it loses Scharfman kind of loses a bit of control in terms of framing. And it becomes a little sloppy. And it takes a lot of enjoyment out of it. It took a lot of enjoyment out of it for me.
I can I can see that. For me, I was less concerned with like the gore of it all. There is one character that gets ripped to shreds. But for me, I think that was fine. But you're right. I was thinking the same thing. Where it's like, yeah, they probably had to do it at night so that the unicorn is easier to animate. you know, a little sneaky, and I respect it. That's fine. Uh, I again, personally, I'm not all that concerned with the unicorn, how the unicorn looks. And it could have been done better. Absolutely. The fact that we say serviceable, or I say serviceable, means that it could have been done better. But my concern here really is just the script and the pacing. And pacing, I think, was okay, but the lack of oomph in terms of like staying power, for me, it doesn't have that. Now, could I be biased? I was honestly like checking myself. It's like every time I say Anthony Kerrigan, am I just gonna assume Barry? Am I just gonna like expect the incredible direction of Barry as a show? Maybe so. So I need to weight myself down. I need to bias in the other direction. But even then, I think the heart of our complaint really comes with that this is a little too straightforward for its own good.
I would agree. And I also think too that like the lack of humor in this thing, I think is really the worst. The jokes don't
Do,
land.
do we say
And
that
they're
often? Because I know we always criticize the quote unquote Marvel writing where there's like a flippant joke every 3 seconds. But
but that's the thing. I feel like the comedy is all but absent for the most part of this thing. Like this is a premise that I think they needed to have a little more fun
it's
with.
it's not bad comedy. There's just none.
it almost feels like it's on autopilot.
Yeah.
Like at some points of this movie, it almost feels like it's autopilot. Like it's almost funny. It's almost really entertaining, but it misses so often on the digs. And I compare it, if you look at other black comedies or even other movies from like what I've kind of coined as the eat the rich genre of filmmaking, Parasite, The Menu, these movies, like they had comedy and it was dead. And oftentimes these movies have like deadpan, not situational, but sort of like a throwaway line that's like said in casual conversation that sort of, that sort of, strokes the funny bone in so many words. And this movie just lacks this. And that was one of the frustrating parts about it, where it's like, okay, this movie's like not really doing or saying anything particularly groundbreaking. The performances are all good, but it's like the comedy doesn't land for me in this thing. And that was probably the biggest problem that I had with it, outside of the fact that, like, one other thing, we're talking about pacing. You said the pacing didn't bother you as much. The pacing, I don't think the pacing's great. But one thing I noticed with the pacing of this movie, too, is that I think it takes far too fucking long for Ridley to make her point about the unicorn tapestries. There's like 3 different start-stop scenes.
You mean Jenna Ortega's character? Yeah,
Jenna Ortega, excuse me.
Well, you're right. That's the character's name. You're
character's name, Ridley. It takes too long for her to spit it out or get an opportunity to spit it out. Like there's the one time she's like trying to actively research. There's the joke about the oversized printer and the gloss paper and everything like that. And then there's another scene, and then there's like another scene where she's trying to like get the whole story out to these people. And like, yeah, okay, maybe it's accurate in its portrayal of a plebeian trying to seduce rich people with some yuppie liberal knowledge, maybe okay. But at the same time, the start-stopping of that is frustrating too, because then by this point, when it's nightfall and the unicorns begin their retaliation, it's like an hour into the thing. And if you're not like gripping me with the comedy or anything like that, then it's like you're really asking a lot then to kind of devolve into this sort of setup after wasting kind of this much time on it.
Yeah, I do wonder if you shave like 10 minutes off of this thing just to get more oomph to it, do some micro editing. Not that we are experts in that field, but something about it. I sadly think, for as like fantastical as these creatures are, and as stacked as this cast really is in terms of talent, absolutely stacked, this is going to be, I think, kind of a forgettable movie. I don't think I'm going to remember by the end of the year all that much, which sucks because the message here is actually really good, in my opinion. That eat the rich kind of storytelling, as you were saying, and I'm all for it. Until things improve in the real world, just keep going at it. Keep going, everyone. Keep serving it up to me. I'll eat that shit up. But I will unfortunately forget about this meal because it's not going on my Instagram. Because it's, I think it sucks because I was kind of, as the movie like became apparent as to what it was trying to be, trying to do, and with a really good cast, I was rooting for it. And thankfully at no point did I feel like bad about it. I just, by the end of it, I felt the way you did as we opened.
Very Gene Shalit there with the meal and then the Instagram tie-in. I like that. Very Gene Shalit. That was very strong. I picked up what you put down there.
Thank you. Just want to. Oh yeah, go ahead.
There's one other major point I want to make. I don't want to make it before intermission, so I'll table that for a second here. Yeah, let's go to break right now. Okay. Because then I'll table my final thought, and I want to see if you agree. Because Catherine and I both agree. We kind of had similar reactions to this movie, and but this piece of it, though, I will say that it's a rare movie in this regard. The rare mediocre movie in this regard, I will say. And we'll come back and chat about that here in just a few short minutes. Also touch on Coyote versus Acme's acquisition by Ketchup Entertainment. Some probably the best news so far in the entertainment world this week. So we still got a little bit to chew on here to continue the Gene Shalit puns. We will be back here momentarily. It is Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. Be back after the Zoom-sponsored intermission. Back and better than ever at Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. We are talking Death of a Unicorn. So this is my last major thought on this movie. Is and Catherine and I were both in agreement of this thing too. Mediocre movie. That's how I would describe Death of a Unicorn. But and I want to know if you agree, Dom. I'm not gonna lie. It's a rare mediocre movie. Great last 5 minutes. And even a couple of her coworkers that saw the movie agreed too. Great, mediocre movie, great final 5 minutes. Everything after the cops arrive.
Oh yeah, okay.
I thought it was a great final 5 minutes and a great moment to fade to black.
I thought you were.
What are your thoughts?
So you're really talking about that ending sequence, like straight up.
The whole ending sequence, the last 5 minutes.
That's after the climax. So
yes.
You're just talking about that. Okay, yeah.
The final minutes of the thing, not even the climax.
It wraps things up quite neatly, and it well earns it, in my opinion, for in terms of where the character arcs land. And I'm glad they did stick the landing. And really, our main criticism corresponds with that, because our main criticism is just kind of like how the film, for the whole of it, kind of treats itself throughout most of it. So for that ending, yeah, I'm with it. I'm with it. I don't disagree.
I liked it a lot. I thought it was one of those endings too where I'm like, damn, if this movie was really good, that would have been a like symphonically great ending. Just the way it all coalesces, the involvement of the unicorns, the look the unicorns get, the mutual look the unicorns and Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega exchange. I love the score in that moment too. I think it's the best moment for the score. A big credit to Dan Romer and Jesu Greco. I think that's how you say his name. Them two really have this like nice symphony of sounds in that final moment, right to the fade to black, the final sound effect, and then the credits. I thought it was the rare mediocre movie with a great ending. And it reminds me of the fact too that it's like, if this movie were funnier, if this movie were slicker and maybe a little bit more clever, that ending could have bumped it up even more.
Slicker and clever are the words, honestly, I was missing. I was secretly grasping for. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
A24 is in a weird space right now. I think. I don't think there's is kind of, and I know you're not a big horror movie fan, and we haven't reviewed a lot of these. We've reviewed more Neon and A24 movies on the show, but Blumhouse, they're not as directionless as Blumhouse. Blumhouse is starting to feel like factory-made movies, in a bad way. There's some really interesting discourse going on with the new movie, The Woman in the Yard, that I won't get into. But a movie I didn't hate, in fact. But there's some interesting discourse going on with that movie and how it deals with suicide. But at any rate, though, they're not as wayward as Blumhouse, not yet at least, but like A24 is starting to become, I almost feel like this Death of a Unicorn movie was sort of their attempt to try to have another mainstream success like Everything Everywhere All at Once, something that's weird but palatably weird for maybe the masses, and it doesn't land as effectively. And they're kind of and I say they're also in a weird spot too, because it's like they're a made brand and a made company in Hollywood right now, and they're trying to like toe the line between going bigger and also remaining true to their roots. I just think it's a really Warfare comes out next week, so it'll be interesting. I think the Alex Garland partnership is going to go strong with them too. I think the Alex Garland partnership will bridge that mainstream gap better, like it did with Civil War, better than something like this.
Because Civil War was their most expensive, but also their highest grossing movie, right?
Not highest. It is their most expensive. Their highest grossing remains Everything Everywhere.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
That but Civil War is still, I believe, in their top 5 highest grossing. It is their most expensive though, to date. And I thought it was supremely effective movie, one of the most topical movies of last year, in terms of just the meat it gives you to chew on, which is another reason I'm excited for Warfare. But to put a bow on Death of a Unicorn, though, yeah, like well acted, competently acted, really well cast, curiously, suspiciously unfunny. and lacking a cleverness that I think is kind of baked into should be baked into satires. And then I was just going to end with this too, because I don't think this was kind of like festering in my mind. I don't think I actually wrote it at stevepulaski.com, but like a black comedy without the comedy is not black. It's bleak. And that's kind of where I sit with Death of a Unicorn, though. I wish I had. I did. This is one of those movies too. I saw like now. I think it's at like a 55 on Rotten Tomatoes, whatever you want to take it that. When last week on Sleepless, when I made the comment at the end that it was divisive, it was at like a 47. And I didn't read any reviews or anything going into it, but when I see that, there's a part of my brain that's like, be the one to give it 4 stars and justify it passionately.
Yeah.
Be the one to go against the grain, or be the one. And I wanted to, but I never got on this damn thing's wavelength. And it's disappointing. It's 2 out of 4 stars for me.
2 out of 4?
2 out of 4.
Yeah, for me it's 2.5 out of 4 stars, and I honestly I was oscillating between 2.5 and 3 because it's really not that offensive of a movie.
No, it's not.
It's offensive in terms of its quality. If anything, I am disappointed with it that you have all of these ingredients here and it's just not coming together for some reason in the final baking stage, you know. And that's really all. I am really hungry right now. Jesus Christ! In terms of this movie, yeah, man, 2.5 out of 4, a strong 2.5 out of 4 stars. Alex Sharfman, director and writer of this movie, I believe.
Yep.
This is his first feature film as a director. And honestly, as a writer too, his rap sheet is not that long. He is a producer on it looks like 20 items according to IMDb, kind of spanning a variety of things, but things I'm not too familiar with personally. But as a first outing, not that bad, really not. And I think there's something there.
Oh no, I would absolutely elect to see future movies by him. You know what I mean? Again, yeah, his rap sheet is, and it's funny because it's like I kept thinking like Sharfman, I've seen that name before. I think I've seen something by him, and I went through his IMDb, and I'm like, no. This I don't know why this name felt familiar to me or what, but I'm like I swore I thought I knew him from something or I seen something with him. I didn't realize until like right before seeing this movie. I'm like, yeah, I don't know this guy. He's a new one to me. No, I'd absolutely see whatever, you know. I very seldom write off directors or writers, you know, even if I don't care for their debut. And then there's like other people where like Quentin Dupois, who made that Killer Tire movie Rubber, where I'm like, you know, you come so I've seen like 8 or 9 of his movies. I'm like, you know, you always come so like 2 instances of the exception, but I'm like, man, you always come so close to being really on the hit the nail on the head with this movie, but you fall just short. And then I keep coming back. You know what I mean? But yeah. We'll segue here so we can get Dom something to eat. We'll segue over here is Coyote versus Acme, just announced on March 31st. You know what? I'm just going to say this right now. Thank God this cleared on March 31st as opposed to April 1st.
Yeah, for real.
And there was a lot of shit yesterday that I did not know what to believe. I did not know what to believe yesterday. Like, you know, the world itself has become kind of a South Park episode. If you just go by the daily headlines and everything, you're like not really sure exactly what the hell's going on, but you really got to be suspect on April Fool's Day these days. So I was really happy that this cleared the day before so we could actually celebrate and not question. But Warner Brothers has been embroiled in this whole thing, a mess of their own making, as we kind of contextualized last week. But they've completed the sale of the previously shelved movie Coyote vs. Acme, the live-action Looney Tunes movie directed by Dave Green, starring Will Forte. Her deadline first to break it, Ketchup Entertainment, the studio behind the movie we just reviewed recently, The Day the Earth Blew Up. They have a deal. They have a deal pegged in the $50 million range to acquire Coyote versus Acme from Warner Brothers. And it's going to be a theatrical release. It is going to be a theatrical release. Now, the curious part with this movie, or with this move, rather, is that the movie was made for $70 million, okay? Ketchup Entertainment acquired it for $50. Now, think of it this way. Warner Brothers is on the hook for the $70 million. Now they got most of it back. Ketchup Entertainment's on the hook for $50 million. What they pour into marketing, I don't know. I think this movie kind of has its own, its own sort of platform at this point. And but this movie doesn't have to make a great deal of money to be a real success. And I think if they were to drop this thing, because they've confirmed it to be a theatrical release sometime next year, if they were to drop this like June, the first weekend in June,
Hmm.
drop it I don't know what I don't know what the 2026 release schedule is. I barely know what this summer's release schedule is. I kind of go month to month. But if they were to drop it like the first weekend of June or the second weekend of June, I don't see how this thing doesn't succeed. If you can give this thing the runway of the summer, or at least the first half of the summer, I don't see how this thing doesn't succeed. Now, I'll kind of piggyback off a point that Joe made last week because I wholeheartedly agree. This is the movie. This really is the barometer movie for do we want what we say we want? Because I was there when Dread was the talk of Reddit in 2012 and bombed. I was there when Kevin Smith took to Twitter after a 2.5 hour podcast asking people if he wanted his Walrus horror movie to be made by tweeting hashtag Walrus yes, hashtag Walrus no. Everybody tweeted hashtag Walrus yes. Tusk was released in 2014 and it was out of theaters in 2 weeks because it had one of the lowest grossing theater averages. So I have seen a lot of movies bomb. I have heard people clamor for Disney to have more representation in movies, and I was one of 2 people in my theater for Queen of Katwe back in 2015. This is the movie that's like, if this thing flops, I don't take anybody for seriously online
Hmm.
anymore. Made the joke to you guys when Joe was talking about like all the people celebrating on Coyote versus Acme's, like people saying we're gonna see it in theaters. I can't wait to see this movie. Joe's like, I am writing a list of all these people on Twitter, and I'm gonna ask where they're at on that Friday it comes out. And I said, yeah. I said, man, you find a YouTube video of where your ass was at by Future and Drake, and you get ready to send that to them when the weekend that this movie comes out because we're going to review it on Sleepless with Steve. I already know one movie we're going to tackle in 2026 because the outcry of this, the shameful, despicable way Warner Brothers has treated Looney Tunes, I might go call up 1 Hour Tees, great company in Chicago. I might call up 1 Hour Tees and custom make my own shirt that has Bugs Bunny in the Looney Tunes circle and it says, fuck Zaslav on it and wear it to the theater that
I
weekend.
did not think
I'm
you were going to do that.
even do that. Like I am going to be out with my AMC popcorn bucket hat. I am going to be out and you are going to know that Coyote versus Acme is what I'm seeing that weekend.
That's
So
really
I hope
funny.
people get behind this thing. I truly do. What say you, Dom?
The same sentiments, truly. But I will say, I there's been a lot of hype around this movie amongst the film inclined online, and I still fear because as I said before, the Looney Tunes do not have a good track record when it comes to feature films. The Day the Earth Blew Up obviously skews that completely now, and in a good way. I'm very happy for that. This may bring it back down a little bit again.
It still hasn't recouped its budget the day the earth blew up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In terms
It's
of quality, you're right. Critically
quality,
speaking,
yeah. Quality, but I mean Back in Action bombed and Space Jam 2, it's kind of hard to say because theaters were still in flux.
I honestly need to watch Back in Action again because I watched it, I think, a couple times
It's
as a
good.
kid. It is good. Okay, good.
It's good.
I
It's
distinctly
good. Not
remember
great,
the
but
Walmart gag where
yes.
they see a mirage and it's like they're in the desert. They're dying, right? And then they see a mirage of Walmart, and then they go to this like, oh no, it's like it's a mirage. You know it's a mirage, right? And then they go and then they leave the Walmart. It's like, no, that was like literally just a Walmart that was in the middle of the desert. I'm like, okay, was it me or was that really effing clever?
That's very 2003 right there.
Yes. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I truly am. I'm watching it based on principle, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Everyone needs to go watch that movie. Also, everyone also needs to watch The Day the Earth Blew Up. If Reddit doesn't, then Reddit, I know is full of shit, but will forever be full of shit.
Yeah, that is very true. Um It's like if you ever, my advice is if you're one of those people that likes to, I don't do this very often, but if you're one of those people that likes to doom scroll Twitter, just a reminder that only 14, last I checked, 14% of the world is on Twitter, which is still a decently substantial number, but
That's a
also
lot.
just keep that in mind. 14%. But anyway, though, reading the comments of Deadline is really inspiring too. And again, Deadline is one of those websites that nerds like me like, and the industry, to be fair. But a lot of people are commenting their excitement for this and they want to see this. I really hope, because parents, parents aren't really involved in this kind of thing. The parents are going to see it if their kids want to see it. So what I hope Ketchup Entertainment can do is put a good marketing campaign behind this thing. Because we think everybody, the people that are in our kind of like film bubble probably think this movie maybe is a little bit more known than it actually is. But if you don't really spend a lot of time in like cinephiliac corners of the internet, you're not really aware. I'm hoping that Ketchup Entertainment can afford a good marketing campaign for this thing in the form of trailers, TV spots, online ads, things like that. Hell, maybe they can do a website, like a game contact, the people behind Funbrain. Remember that? The people behind Funbrain or whatever, game website, edutainment website kids use
Yeah.
nowadays. I don't know. But like build a cool website or something. Get some buzz around this, because 2026, I know it's going to be here before you know it, but it's still a long enough way away. So I'm really hoping that they can come out and do something with this because I think this movie sounds, and I think this movie is going to have a little bit of like social commentary resonance just by the very virtue of its plot. And I'm excited. And I also think too, I never really thought it, but Will Forte feels like a really good guy to act alongside the Looney
Oh,
Tunes. He
100%.
feels he feels like somebody that can really play up working with cartoons. And a guy, I'm not gonna lie too, I rolled my eyes at him when he started his acting career, and I really didn't have a whole lot of interest in him. But I'm not gonna lie, the last like 3 or 4 movies, I have really liked what John Cena's been doing
I
too.
remember watching his debut, I think film debut, The Marine. You remember that movie?
I do.
And it was that's I thought that was gonna be his peak. And I love to be proven wrong. Like we always say, we never want anything to be bad, but we just have an inkling for those things. And I'm very happy to be wrong about him.
In the last few years, he's impressed me with The Wall. He's impressed me really specifically with Ricky Stenicki. I think that movie is truly tremendous, and I think that movie has a lot of merit and shows off what he can do. So I have a lot of faith too. I think getting him in a family-friendly movie like this, I think alongside the Looney Tunes, I mean, he's like a real life cartoon character in himself. I think he'll do well. So I'm really excited to see this thing. Coyote versus Acme going to be in theaters 2026. Thanks to Ketchup Entertainment. Really excited for this. Definitely wanted to put a pin in this. And unless any other crucial developments, maybe a release date or something gets announced here in the next subsequent months, the next time we talk about it on the air will probably be when it comes out. And I know Joe's not going to want to miss that show. Moreover, that's our show tonight, ending a little bit before curtain call here. Next week, we called an audible. We were going to review a Minecraft movie. Not going to review a Minecraft movie. I'm still going to see it for better or for worse. You know what I mean? You know what I thought about too?
I got Regal Unlimited. So my conscience is clean.
I am going to see it with AMC stubs, but I will say, you know what I thought about it? I already got a line for my review, good or bad. This is a blockbusting blockbuster.
Get out.
It's a blockbusting.
End the show. End the
literal
show.
blockbusting blockbuster. I just thought about that. Anyway, though, we're calling an audible. I was so fortunate to have the luckiest man in America come to theaters out here. I almost brushed it off just thinking we're not going to get it. Sure enough, we did. It's the Paul Walter Hauser-led vehicle that is about the 1980s Press Your Luck game show scandal involving Michael Larson. It's a little bit too elaborate to go into right now, but I will fully contextualize it. We will fully contextualize it on the show next week. The luckiest man in America. Johnny Knoxville's in it. Walton Goggins is in it. Super pumped. Super pumped for this movie.
Yeah, me too.
Cannot wait to watch it. That's our show tonight, though. Great show it was. We missed Joe. We hope he's back next week. I think he should be back next week. And then the threesome will be reunited. Until then, for Dominic Guanzon, the unseen but still beloved Joe Viso, and yours truly, this has been